Okay. Good evening. I'm Peter Goslin. I'm an ANC commissioner. I represent District 6, which is largely the west side of Connecticut Avenue, back to 42nd Street between Western and Military, with a peninsula to the east, to Nevada between Military and Legation. And I'm sponsoring this, conducting this Zoom meeting on behalf of the residents who I'm supposed to represent, but of course, all Chevy Chase residents are welcome. A little bit of housekeeping. You'll see in the chat that I put in a very simple suggested agenda and links to Mayor Bowser's announcement last Friday picking the Rift Valley Partners proposal as modified, and a link to the deputy mayor's website for this project, which has some of the renderings on it. I have to say that coming into this meeting, I was again reminded of my deficiencies when it comes to Zoom meetings. I'll be damned if I know how to share screen. If somebody knows that and I can make them co-host and they can use the links in the chat to bring up some of these illustrations, that might help things. But while somebody decides
Uh,
whether or not to volunteer, you're going to volunteer for that?
sure.
Who's that? Sure. Was
That's
that Cheryl?
Cal.
Okay, I think here.
Oh, or Cheryl or whatever.
Why I'm the Can I make co-host? There it is. I'm going to do it to Cal because somehow the menu comes up for him and it doesn't for you, Cheryl. Who knows why? Um, Welcome. Most immediately, we're here to discuss the development proposal that the mayor has picked for the Chevy Chase Community Library. My immediate aim in conducting this is to hear from you about what you think about the Rift Valley Partners proposal, whether you oppose or embrace, like, dislike, aspects of it, what aspects you would seek changes in or amendments to. But in a broader sense, we're opening, perhaps unfortunately, we're opening a new chapter in what has really been a decade-long debate about what kind of community we are and where we want to see our neighborhood go. Um, Talking about where one lives is always going to touch deep roots. And some of the root touching on this subject over the past 10 years has been angry and embittering. I don't think either side in the debate to date gets most or even much of what they want in the proposal that the mayor has picked. Certainly, those who are against any housing or affordable housing at the community center library site aren't happy about the proposal. But many of those who want affordable housing at the site have got to be disappointed with the Rift Valley proposal too. Just to be clear where I stand, although I'm going to try to put that in the background tonight, I can't support this proposal. I believe the site can accommodate some housing and affordable housing while still fulfilling its predominantly public purposes, but way less than the 177 units that this plan proposes or was going to seek to build. But the fact that neither side, including me, get most of what we want suggests that it might be a good time to see if we can open a new chapter, one where that's a little less rancorous and where there's a little more listening to the other side. So that's my broader aim in this conversation. Um, just again on housekeeping, in that with that as a goal, I hope people will keep their comments sharp and questions civil and short, no more than 2 minutes. If a speaker can't do that, I reserve the right to mute them or end the session altogether. Um, so in the little agenda that I've posted in the chat, I'm
Peter, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you posted that before most of us came on, we don't see it because we only see from the chat from the point we come on to a
oh
call. So
dear.
can you repost it on the chat for us?
So Cal, just tell me, do you see link to Mayor Bowser's 116?
No. And
So
all,
so
no,
let's see, if I block define all
the
of
other
this.
thing is you didn't finish making me co-host, so I'm still not co-host.
Okay, so here we go. I'm copying this and then um, so if we're, yeah, here we go. So let me paste this here, paste. Now, tell me if you see that.
You have to send it, the little thing in the lower right corner
Yes.
of the chat. There we go.
Okay, now you co-host, make co-host, confirm. All right, you should now be,
Yes, yes, thank you.
okay. And Cal, if you can, since it's thin as it is, you'll see that I've posted a link to 1/16/26 slide deck on revised Rift Valley proposal. Do you see that? It's probably the third item down in that thing.
Oh, it's not showing up as an actual, okay, I see.
Well, is there a way for you to get that to bring that image up?
Well, it came out as a Chrome extension link, and I'll see. Let me see what happens when I try to go there.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on
No,
tech.
I don't either.
So, if this doesn't work, lo and behold, we just have to discuss the issue. Um, uh,
I got it. I got it. I got it. You want it up now?
oh, well, just wait a second. At the
Okay.
very top of that, now, what should now be visible to you, you'll see a little agenda, a suggested agenda. And I'm prepared to go in either of two directions here. I'm prepared to do a 5, 6 minute presentation of what we know about the current proposal. I have to, so you're not disappointed. I have to tell you, I really have no new information, and the information we have so far about the proposal is fairly thin. I have carefully reviewed the original proposal, looked over some things, and I have talked to a number of development industry people, so I have some sense of where things are going. But I can do a presentation, or we can jump right into discussion and we can talk about the guts of the proposal as we go along. Maybe just for the sake of argument, if people would show their hands either on their screens or by the React raise hand function, how many want a little presentation to start off with? I'm seeing a few hands. Uh, how many want to just get on with talking?
Why don't you clear the hands first? Hold on a second.
Okay,
Okay.
those who don't who want to get right on to who want to get right on to talking, with those who just voted for a presentation, take their hands down, and would the others put their hands up? Okay. Well, so I think we go with presentation. This is going to be as short and sweet as I can make it. And I'm going to try in doing this to say what I know, what I think I know, what I don't know, and what's just pure ass opinion. So, um, uh, the city received or forwarded to this community 8 different development proposals for the community center library site. Rift Valley is the only one that proposed mixed income housing, including market rate housing. All the others were 100% affordable housing by some measure of affordability. The Rift Valley was also, I think, the one with the largest number of units of any of the 8 proposals. This last year in March, when they presented it, they were seeking to build uh, 206 units in an 80-foot, in a building that at its maximum is 80 feet tall with penthouse. Um, that has been modified, and the current proposal is for 100. There are 2 major changes from the proposal that Rift Valley made in March of last year. The first is that the balance between affordable and market rate in the original proposal was essentially 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 affordable housing by some measure, either for very low income housing, very low income households, or for so-called workforce housing households, 80% or above, 80% of area median income or above, and one third for market rate. That has been switched exactly so that it is now essentially two-thirds for market rate and one third for affordable housing. And the affordable units, 54 of the 177, would go to people with 30 to 50% area median income. The other change in the proposal is they lopped a floor off. The um, the original proposal with penthouse was 7 floors. The pictures, and maybe Cal, if you could bring that up now, and Cal.
I'm coming.
So let's just, if you can go to a picture of the Connecticut Avenue there. So you see the original proposal had 6 floors, a penthouse, and this first floor. So really, if you count the penthouse, it was sort of eight floors, or 7 if you don't count the penthouse. The new proposal has only it's hard to tell, but it looks like 5 floors. That is, if we assume that the library and community center and retail is on just one floor, a higher ceiling floor than the rest, and then a penthouse. Um, in all our debates, the height of the building has been a big concern. As I say, during the presentation a year ago, Rift Valley said they intended to build this building to an 80-foot maximum, which is the maximum that the new zoning for this site allows. They've said now they've lopped off a floor. I mean, you could sort of guesstimate from what they said last year that their floors, other than the first floor, were about 10 feet. And one might expect that that means that they've taken off 10 feet from 80 or we're at 70. It's not entirely clear to me that that's where we are. In any case, as one tries to judge floors and height, just do keep in mind that as opposed to the current site, the current buildings, which sit on a pedestal of land about 10 feet tall, certainly at McKinley in Connecticut, this would take it down to street level. Um, uh, the proposal, besides 177 units of apartments of housing, including 54 affordable, would have the community center and library, mostly in the wing in front of Connecticut and over to Northampton, and 8,000 square feet of retail along McKinley and as McKinley hits Connecticut. Um, uh, when we talked about this a year ago, there are figures about the gross square footage of the project were all over the map, but they were all high compared to the others. Um, uh, the mayor in her press release said that the library in this new modified proposal will be 23,000 or so square feet, and the community center at 21,000. I have a chart that I'm going to try to put on the listserv. I had hoped to get it up tonight, but I don't have the faintest idea how to do that, which tries to compare that to what we have now. And so I will distribute that. Um, in terms of the distribution of units amongst studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and so forth, the original proposal was essentially for studios and 3 bedrooms. They seemed very specific about that. The mayor, in her press release about this modified proposal, said there will be the whole range from studio to 3 bedrooms. So I mean, I mean, those part, I guess there are 2 other areas I really ought to cover. Parking. Um, it's not clear. It appears that they're going to keep the same parking that they originally proposed, which was something like 140, 150 spaces, 30 or so, 30 or more than 30 for the the community center and library, and the rest for the residences. The
Peter, do you want me to move to a different photo?
Yeah, maybe move to the site plan, the kind of top-down map. Yeah. So the developers at the presentation a year ago, and again in what the mayor's press release said, are very proud of the fact that they say they've increased the green space by 50%. They clearly have done part of that by taking away the parking lot that's now at the back of the lot on the right of this picture. Um, I guess one of the questions I raised is they made a big point of talking about their wide balconies serving on the second floor, serving the public facilities, the library and community center. That's the line that runs past the Heritage Tree on Connecticut Avenue to Northampton and wraps around. They also, the mayor's press release talks about a rooftop terrace. Again, we have very thin information about whether what you're looking at on the inverted, the U is rooftop terrace, and who that would be open to. Uh, Let me stop we can talk more about specifics although I'm pretty thin on any more specifics, and just briefly talk about what my best guess is about where we go from here, and where at least the city goes from here. Uh, Talking to development industry people, a couple development industry people, they say that this very much is still a concept, that the city is still going to have to negotiate with the developers about a lot of the specifics. In fact, they say the likelihood that the developers know how many studios, one bedrooms, two bedrooms, and so forth are in the building is very slim. They're not at that point. Where the affordable housing would be relative to the market rate housing, probably they don't know that. Um, um, uh, so, in addition, both the library and the Department of Parks and Recreation, which manage respectively the library and the community center, will be engaging in public discussions about what their space should look like, how it should be built out. The library is the deputy mayor, Nina Albert, is quoted in a WTOP interview as saying that the library intends to conduct a 2-year public engagement. I called up Martha Sakocha, who's communications for the library, and she said that they will engage in a very thorough public engagement, but did not know about the 2-year number. And she said that in general, at least in other libraries, and most of their libraries have been freestanding, developed just by the library system, that engagement is fully complete before there's a shovel in the ground. So it could be that we still have a long ways to go. I would just make one observation that is opinion on my part, that weighs in the other direction. I think that this mayor is in her last year. I think that she wants to leave a brick and mortar legacy. The stadium is going to have a lot of bricks and a lot of mortar, and that will satisfy some of this urge. But I think she is going to be very, very intent on driving this forward. And my own sense is that while there may be pro forma engagement with this community, we are going to have to push hard to get real engagement. And with that, I'll open it up. Cal, why don't you take this down? We'll just have it aside for um, in case people want to refer to it. I'm interested in what people think of the proposal generally, and then bear down on how they think an ANC commissioner such as myself ought to proceed from here. Any takers? Yeah, we're all stunned by the proposal. Yeah, Cal.
So I've been at this since the beginning. This is one of the original proposals from the recommendations from the Task Force on Racism 5.5 years ago um, on housing. And I have said more than once to the Racial and Social Equity Committee that I would not want to see a single person of a well-to-do person in that building. I've softened a little bit from that point. That would mean 100% affordable, of course, at 50% AMI or lower. Um, I've softened. I mean, I could probably live with the two-thirds affordable at, half of that being at 50, half of that being at 30%, and one-third market rate, if that's the only way the economics can work. But I'm totally against two-thirds market rate. Um, that's insane. And, there's also design considerations that I have. It was not one of my favorite ones. I'll say that one. I don't particularly like the curved columns and whatnot. Um,
Let me just
I'll leave that to others to talk about height and things like that. What were you going to
let
say,
me
Peter?
remark about why. I mean, this again is in the category of opinion and speculation. I don't know anything. My gut tells me the reason among the eight proposals, I think our survey shows this was a really a laggard in terms of popularity. Um, and as I say, very different in that it had a substantial amount of market rate in it. I have to believe that what's happened since March of last year, when the eight proposals were presented to this community, is that Donald Trump became president again and has along with everything else he's done, really taken huge cuts, made huge cuts at HUD. And so that my sense is the reason this was picked is because the operating subsidies for the affordable housing in the seven other proposals have essentially vanished. And so that this proposal is premised on the market rate units subsidizing the affordable units. And I suspect, and we will find out as the debate goes forward, that that means that the developer is going to be pretty reluctant to give up essentially a substantial majority of the units being market rate.
Yuck.
Yeah. Other thoughts about this and thoughts about how we need to proceed. I mean, as I say, I don't think we're going to get Cal talks about this going back 5 years. In fact, I went back and we're almost at the 10-year mark. In April of 2016, the ANC started talking with Mayor Bowser about renovating the community center. And we moved through a series of steps. And in fact, we're retained an architect and started redesigning the community center. So here we are 10 years later, same buildings, same debate. Chris.
Thanks, Peter. One comment you said that you think that the market rate units are intended to subsidize the affordable units. I think, in fact, it's primarily the free land that subsidizes the affordable units. That's what the city is giving as a subsidy, and it's they haven't explained it, but I suspect that one of the reasons they went with a proposal that was mostly market rate is so that they don't need to give additional subsidies from something like the Housing Production Trust Fund. Or you may be right about, additional operating subsidies not being available. Um, but I think probably the choice does come down to money in one way or another. Um, I will say I'm disappointed that they went with a mostly market rate project. I would love to see more affordable housing. But I've also, through reading Ezra Klein's Abundance and other things, I really think that this city and this country need a lot more housing, a lot more abundant housing, and that housing ought to be along major commuter arteries like Connecticut Avenue. So um, and to provide the subsidy you need for affordable housing, one way to do that is to use public owned land. So this site, people have thrown out, well, why not build at Wells Fargo or why not build at Safeway? Well, that's because you'd have to buy the land. Here, you can subsidize the project by providing free land for the purpose of building affordable housing. And my guess is sort of 1/3 of the units was about as far as that subsidy will go in terms of buying down the cost of the project. Um, so ultimately, I do think, from my perspective as affordable housing advocate, I think we should lobby the city to come up with some funding, whether it's HPTF or something else, to make more of these units affordable. Um, but I think we should support the project. We deserve a new library and a new community center, and we ought to have more housing along Connecticut Avenue and Chevy Chase. Thanks.
Chris, let me just ask, as somebody who's advocated for affordable housing at the site for a long time, what do you think about the mix? And as this debate continues into the future, will you be pressing the council? Will you be pressing the DemPed and the mayor to both up the number but change the focus, for example, on just really relatively really low income households to, for example, include some workforce housing?
Yeah, I don't know, and I'm sort of um, advocacy adjacent. My wife is into the Washington Interfaith Network and really being out there doing the advocacy, and I'm a bit more of an observer. I share those views. I suspect that there's an opportunity to lobby DemPed and the mayor's office before this proposal goes to the council. I don't know how much the council will be able to change once the mayor submits a package. They were able to negotiate some minor changes to the RFK Stadium deal after the mayor submitted it. I don't know if that could happen here, but I would at least suggest that the initial opportunity is for people to press DemPed to come up with more public money to increase the amount of affordable housing.
We're going to go to Brian, Randy, and Cheryl. Let me just say one other thing. Clearly, the use of the land, maybe even the ownership of the land, is the major subsidy. But one of the things, and we've said this over and over again in the discussions that have occurred over the years, in addition to building a building, to try to satisfy other needs of the community, they're going to bury the parking, and parking garages are wildly expensive. So there's a lot of stuff that the developer is going to have to subsidize, and I suspect we're in a new world in terms of the financing. Brian.
This question is kind of for Chris, in the sense that, you know, I I feel like the community center and library serve a diverse community that exists today, and it was, according to the DPR report, it was the third most actively used community center in the entire district pre-COVID. And you've got a lot of current users that are going to be impacted in a way that I think is really unfair to the community. One of my questions is if Wells Fargo could somehow be brought into whatever development occurs, could density be spread out and the impact on users of the community center and library be lessened?
Chris, you're welcome to address those things, but I mean, those
I'm happy to take a swing at it. Obviously, different people will differ. To me, the statistic that this is one of the most heavily used community centers is exactly why we need to replace an aging, decrepit community center with something brand new. We don't know a lot of details yet about what would be in that project, and I think DPR would engage in a further public process to figure out what, and DCPL, what do people want in the new library? What do they want in the new community center? But to me, that's a reason to go ahead expeditiously and replace the crummy facility we've got. As far as Wells Fargo, who knows? I have no insight into what they're thinking of doing with their land. Maybe the upzoning gives them some incentive to develop their piece of property. I don't know, but I don't think the city can make that happen short of buying the property, which isn't going to happen. I think that's to me, that's kind of pie in the sky. Maybe Wells Fargo will develop, but I don't think the city can make private property owners put housing on their properties.
two observations. Two observations. Brian,
One quick follow-up. I know I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry, Commissioner, but one quick follow-up. My understanding is that the selection of Rift Valley doesn't necessarily guarantee that they will actually do the project. They got the opportunity. Could they pass it on to another developer? Does that happen, Chris, from your perspective?
you're right. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, that's seems to me they're the ones. I think sometimes the way these work is somebody develops a property and then once it's completed, they sell it. I don't know what the city's contract with Rift Valley would look like, but that contract needs DC Council approval. And, I think there's a chance to weigh in, but they have been chosen as the lead developer, and assuming they can reach a contract with the city, they're the ones who are going to develop it.
let me just offer two tidbits here. One is to Brian's point about the use of the community center. I think we're the only community center in Ward 3. Brandy can correct me if I'm wrong about that. It is
There's at least one other.
is there, it is an incredibly heavily used building, and the use is almost invisible. If all you have to do though is monitor the parking lot and back, and it's astounding how much of the day every day that's full and you got people there. The other observation I'd just make about the Wells Fargo thing is this, that the city is in financial trouble already because of downtown. And this mayor is in her last year and I think wants a brick and mortar legacy. Again, this is in the opinion category. Long lead time projects that involve lots of new money seem to me to be an unlikely way that this is going to unfold. The other thing is with regard, and in that regard, it does seem to me that we know of projects, take the Reeves Center over on 14th Street, that change hands and, get stopped and restarted and so on and so forth. That's in an era when there's a mayor who's got years to her term. I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of interest in switching horses on the city's part. Randy.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Chris said. I think he's absolutely right. But just one point about the subsidies and who's getting the subsidies and where is it going. I have been concerned from the very beginning that the city was not allocating enough money for the community center and the library. And I know that's true with the community center because back in 2019, when we were talking about only the renovation of the community center, we determined at that time that the budget that had been allocated was insufficient. It's now less than that. despite all the inflation that's occurred. So I suspect, I don't know this for any fact, but I suspect that some of the market rate housing is actually subsidizing the community center and the library. And I've always urged the council and the mayor to provide enough money so that the city provides the community center and the library, not subsidizing it through the developer. And so there's no transparency of that at all in this. And I would like to see more of the financials to know exactly where is that subsidy going? Is it going to affordable housing, or is it in fact going to subsidize the community center and the library? And we'll know more about that maybe when the actual design of the community center and library is more apparent.
To date, just to follow up on Randy, to date, the city has said in the debate up prior to the announcement of the choice of Raffelli and in contacts we've had with them, the ANC has had with them since, they're not going to provide us anything about the financials of the Raffelli proposal or any of the others. Cheryl. Cheryl, you're on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Too many units and too tall for the site. It's too dense. The parking, they don't specify it. They just say 30 for the community, for public. It doesn't say in any of this how many other parking spaces will be there. And I can't imagine that they're going to be sufficient, which means overflow. I was surprised about the retail, which competes with our local businesses. The um, the mayor says she's already more than met her housing goals. So that argument, again, subsidized housing, there's a lot of senior housing and subsidized housing that's being built and has been built, Friendship Heights and so forth. So, the ball, I was happy to see the ball playing field, but I don't have any way of comparing the size of that to the existing. I think that would be important information. And that's it.
Okay. Okay. Sandra.
Yes, I'd just like to ask if the whole surplusing of the property is a dead issue. I mean, from way back in the beginning, I've been distressed at their cavalier assumption that they can do private property on public land. And everybody seems to have sort of said, well, that's the way it is. And I'm just asking if in our wisdom here, if that's true. Is that a dead issue? Do I need to just forget that and think it's not a factor?
Well, Sandra, I mean, I'm not sure what that is about. Does somebody have could they mute, everybody mute if they're not speaking? Um, Let me just say, I mean, my own view about this, and this is my opinion, is that this project is the last one standing. We're in a world that has so changed from even a year ago that we're getting the sort of drag project. And my own view is that given that, we ought to take a long view and wait. And I believe that the site could accommodate some housing, 25 units, 35, 40 units of affordable home ownership on a community land trust that keeps the underlying land in the public domain in perpetuity and has community members on the board, so the community has some say about the land. But I mean, Chris and Randy and others are going to say that that is going to require two things. It's going to require us to live with an affirmatively crummy community center and an out-of-date library, and it's going to require an entirely new debate. I mean, it requires the mayor and the deputy mayor for economic development and planning to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. The one thing I'll say about this, I'll pitch my idea about this, is that if the mayor's record on affordable isn't as strong as she wants it to be, or affordable rental isn't as strong as she wants it to be, it's really awful on affordable home ownership. And a quick switch to that might attract her interest if this thing gets hung up in a public debate. So, um, uh, Christina.
Yes, Peter, I agree with you about what should be there. And I don't think that needs to be a dead issue. But first, I want to answer Sandra's question about surplusing. My understanding is that the council must vote to surplus the land, and that vote has yet to occur. So that issue is not dead. And I think those of us who are concerned about this proposal at a very minimum should be considering what we do in advance of that vote. My thinking is also, why don't we go back to the drawing board? And by that, I mean, we have a new administration coming. It probably will be Janice Lewis George versus Kenyon McDuffie. This mayor is going to be a lame duck very soon. We don't need to embellish her record. That's not our job. Our job is to serve our community and to, I think, do better than this proposal now, which is, Peter, as you have said, is one that makes almost everybody unhappy. The affordable housing advocates are getting far too little, and those opposed development on the site are really getting hosed, pardon me. Why do we not simply say to the city, you haven't been sufficiently transparent? The community did not vote for this proposal, and a lot of the community opposed all proposals. It's time to rethink, table this until a new administration comes in, rethinks the financing, especially in light of all of the impact of the Trump administration, in light of the impact of a changing economy, does more genuine community outreach than has been done with regard to this entire plan, and be fair to everyone. And that is the affordable housing advocates and the community opponents of development at the same time, by doing a better job. There's far too little community engagement here on the part of all representative community through the entire history of this project.
So clearly I agree with you on this, but I think I'm trying to be politically realistic too. I think we then need to discuss kind of how the community perceives.
The cucumbers in there, you can't.
But somebody's not muted and is talking. Okay. Tom, it seemed Tom sneering that turned your box green as if it was in your screen, your home that talk came out of. So, anyways, we need at some point in this conversation to talk about, well, then what do we do? Because I do think that it's very likely that I don't want to. I don't want to prejudge this, and I mean, one of the things I've learned as an ANC commissioner is that ANC, your colleagues on an elected board don't appreciate you predicting how they're going to vote. But my guess is that the ANC will vote very similar to the way they voted already, which is to oppose housing on the site. I was disappointed in that, but if the issue before them is this proposal, take it or leave it, I will vote with the majority to leave it. But that, in some sense, is likely to be the last time the ANC is paid any attention to. And so the real question for the community is, So what do we do? I mean, Christina suggested a couple of things. I mean, implicit in what you said is that we need to get to Janice Lewis George and we need to get to McDuffie. We need to fight when this thing comes up. We need to go to the council and fight when this thing comes up, and including getting to our council member Matt Fruman, as this thing comes closer to a surplus vote. It's a bizarre process that was sprung upon us late on in the 10 years that we've been involved in this. That the city has to vote separately to say that this is surplus property. And to Brian's point, a bizarre vote given how heavily used the site is, and then vote to dispose of it. And that would be approve. In this case, it would be probably approve the Rift Valley proposal. So they're gonna be two. I think there are going to be two votes coming up. Randy, if you're on still and listening, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this. So there's the issue of getting some relief from the council, but I'm interested in what people, and also what for those who advocate affordable housing, how you would proceed in this situation, because I'm trying to figure out what to do myself. So, Cheryl, you're muted.
I was going to say other points and I got bollocksed up. I don't agree with losing the public nature of this public property. So I'm against surplusing it. And I liked your approach of the trust and so forth and keeping the land public in perpetuity. But so I'm not against affordable housing, but certainly the size and scale is off. But we're getting nothing from this. 30% affordable for the height increase is what any developer gets in the city. And so we're giving up our public land and public purpose for what any developer would get. Supposedly, they also get money for the community center and library. So maybe that forces their hand to divulge what the expenditures would be on each. The other thing is the parking is really important and they have nothing about that. And it still won't be sufficient for 277 units.
No.
100.
177 units, even if it's 120 and it's 30 for the community center, it's just not going to be enough.
I'd say the issue of parking is a complicated one in the city because the city is against cars. In fact, I believe that of the 8 proposals that the community saw a year ago, when 7 of them were more viable than they are now, I think the Rift Valley the Rift Valley proposal had more parking than I think any of the others, 147 spaces, 38 public, and the rest, whatever the difference is, 109 or something like that for residences. That's way over. I mean, again, Randy, if you know this, that's way over what the city requires for parking. They don't require one-to-one because they're trying to discourage us from using cars. So, anyways, Michelle.
Just quickly speaking to the parking, in their latest proposal, they do say there would be 30 spaces for the public facilities, which they claim is more than there is now, which is a complete misrepresentation. Right now, there are 30 spaces on that outdoor lot, but they say nothing about how many other parking spaces they'll give in contrast to their first proposal, which would lead one to think that we won't be getting the amount that they initially said. I mean, we don't know, but it would seem if they knew, they would say it in their new proposal. Secondly, 177 units can mean more than 177 people. Sure, some won't have cars, but many will. And the other problem is with apartments, they will most certainly charge the residents extra to park. And I know people who live in apartments who have cars who choose not to use their underground parking garage because of the added cost. And they park on the street. And there'll also be guests and deliveries and all that. So, and our community relies on parking. We're not on a metro. And people come to our Avalon Theater from all over. So the parking is a big deal.
Yeah. And I didn't look, I mean, I don't, we are so thin on information here that I mean, I don't, there's no need to dwell in detail about this. But in fact, the mayor's press release, which is sort of what we know about the revised proposal by Raffaele, says more than 30, I think. One of the problems I raised in March when Rift Valley presented their original proposal is you'll see, if we were to bring up the site plan again, that the proposal is for entry and exit to the parking garage to be from essentially where the parking lot is now onto McKinley. Now, if you look at the distance between the parking lot and the lights at McKinley and Connecticut, you're going to get a huge pile up there. You get queuing there already when it's a red light on McKinley. So there's a complication there. Again, architects and engineers can work out things about this, but that's gonna be an issue if they build this proposal the way they have it. Again, oh, Mary Rouse, you're muted. It'd be nice if you came on camera.
Can't get this. Is this working?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
But Peter, I listened again today to the Rift Valley Rift proposal from March, and I hear your comments about the parking on McKinley were made at that time, which I appreciate, and that's a serious problem. That the topography of that street does not lend itself to a major in and out to a huge apartment building like this. I agree with Cheryl Wasserman that this is much too much for this land, for this spot. We, as a community, deserve a good community center and library, and there's no reason we can't use the buildings right now and make those better. And we can also add to them and change them. In 2019, just before COVID hit, there were several meetings that are still available online to watch, where the company, I think Bell Architects, presented 2 PowerPoints to the community about what they had in mind. And they were, at the time, aware that there was not enough money to do this just for the community center. And $1 million had already been spent on the library. So nobody was talking about the library. And so I would just say that this community deserves to get what we would like to have in a community center and library, and that we don't have to have housing on on public land and give up our public land. There are plenty of other places to put housing, especially, Peter, if your idea of a community land trust is something that other people support. There's probably other places that can happen. I think that with the Lisner Louise project appears to be successful at Legation and Western. That's a really nice addition to our community. If Matt Fruman supports this development, if it ever comes to a vote before the council, he will ruin his legacy, I think, supporting this when he could have been doing more of that at just the way he did it at Western through the Lisner Louise as the chairman of the board there. And so I would love to think that Matt will stand firm with his comments to all of us that said, if this project doesn't deserve to go forward, it won't. I hope that we can remind him of his words. Though it wasn't said quite like that, but he basically assured us that if this wasn't good for the community, he would not support it. So we need to remind him, at least I think, and I appreciate, Peter, that you have put this meeting together and that you are keeping an open mind about this and willing to, appreciate what other people are going through on this, because I think that that's the kind of approach we all need to take. That we need to listen and learn and hear more information. But I think at this point we're not being respected enough as a community by the city, and we haven't been for a long time. And I think that it's time for us to stand up for what we want and believe and think is right.
All right, thank you. I I'd love to hear from we're getting a rash of the arguments for no housing. Do any of the people who have for years advocated for affordable housing at the site have are any of them willing to share their views? I mean, besides Chris, Baden, share their views about what they'd like to see changed, how they could see this uh, project modified to satisfy what they'd been seeking in a project at the site. Not a hand to show.
Because nobody wants housing.
All right, Michelle.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
Mute. Yeah. Jim Nash, former Commissioner Jim Nash.
Okay.
Jim?
Yeah.
Yep, up.
Trying to turn on the video and
That's down at the
there it
bottom.
is. Okay.
Yep, there you go.
I've long been in favor of affordable housing on the site, but to me, this just isn't enough affordable housing. So I would be against this. And it sort of, to me, it can feed the narrative, the story that opponents of the project had all along, that this would just be a giveaway to developers. So I would be against this project. And the other question, though, that hasn't come up so much, that was big for me and for my constituents, is the amount of green space that's going to be left in this project. Will it be more or less or the same, and how will it be used? Maybe you don't have any information on that, but that's another big issue, and it hasn't come up tonight. So anyway, as an affordable housing advocate, I would say no to this.
Okay. Michelle, I'm curious about others. This is this captures this odd situation in which we are in, which is that this project seems to attract a fair amount of opposition from both ends, from both parties in the argument that we've had over essentially the whole time I've been an ANC commissioner. And yet, one of the strange things is that it's a little hard to know how the community can have much more voice in this. Um, Michelle, you've spoken once. Let me just go to Cheryl Barnes. Yeah, Cheryl.
Peter, thank you. I think everybody in the community is affordable housing advocate to some extent. I've tabled in front of the community center and library for the last few years, and I have yet to have anybody stop and say, we don't want affordable housing in Washington, D.C. No, that is not the case at all. Everybody wants it here, wants it there, wants it everywhere. That's a different story. The point is, Chevy Chase Voice is against any housing at this site because it's the only community commons that 3,4G has, where we all meet and mingle freely on equal ground, equal terms. Everybody is equal there, always has been, always will be, and that's the way it should stay. That said, there are other locations in Ward 3 that are much more feasible for the type of housing that Washington, D.C. really needs. And I put a link in the chat, which I hope everybody will go and take a look at. It tells what kind of housing Washington, D.C. desperately needs. And it's for the extremely low income. That is what D.C. is short on. DC is not short on workforce housing, not short on anything, above 80% for sure, and actually has quite a bit of the 50% AMI and above. What we really, really need in DC is for the desperately needy. And that's not what's being talked about for this site. However, we've got 20 plus acres at UDC. That is one of the most underutilized public lands in Washington, D.C. If 200 units or 500 units or whatever were put on that location, that could be integrated into the fabric of UDC. There's a social work program there. There's a clinic already there. There are educational opportunities there. There's a business. I mean, the list is endless. That, in my opinion, is a site that is compatible with the type of housing that the city actually desperately needs. Why the city pinpointed this little 1.7 acre community center and library site in Chevy Chase as the only place to put their housing is completely mysterious to me, and nobody at City Hall has been able to explain that in any clear way, in person, on the phone, via email. It's just an incompatible use, and that is why so many residents in 3-4G have voted against housing on that site. It has nothing to do with people in 3-4G being against social housing, being against affordable housing, helping people less fortunate. That's
Okay.
all.
Thanks. Michelle, very, very short. And then if Randy is still on, Randy, are you still on? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm looking for he may not be on. Well, I mean, I ask anybody who's been on throughout this debate has been arguing for affordable housing on the site. I'm looking for suggestions of how you would modify the Rift Valley proposal I mean, because right now it does seem to me that this loses both ends of the spectrum on this issue. Anyway, Michelle, briefly, what's up?
Yeah, I mean, I want to speak to a different issue. Jim Nash raised the green space. I have a neighbor who lives just very close to the site, and she is an architect. And when she saw the plans, she texted me and she said the entire green spaces are in shade and shadow, as the tall buildings are on the south side along McKinley and along the east side, and also at least partially along the east and west, and also partially along the east and west. If you look at what they call the public terrace in the back, it is surrounded on three sides. And whether you look, and she said it's basically just allowing northern light. Another architect that I know said, yeah, nothing's going to grow with northern light. You know, in their depiction of the site map, they put all these trees. There won't be any. And it would take 30 years for trees to be, have any value there. It'll probably mostly be concrete. But the fact is, I think people maybe perhaps aren't visualizing what this is going to be like, especially in that back area, with a 7-story or perhaps 6-story wall of windows on three sides, just jutting up. Right now, the site is open. It's not going to feel that way. It's going to be very claustrophobic. And it's not going to be particularly pleasant for people to be in. So I just think people really need to visualize what it will be like with those tall buildings right there, not across the street from you, but right there where you are.
Okay.
Peter, you're looking for a position to take that will be realistic and effective. That's what I hear you saying.
Look, I would love to think that both the sentiment in the community and downtown, a sentiment strong enough to convince downtown to change gears. But I mean, I'm well aware that the proposal I have for this site would take the mayor and the deputy mayor to completely go back to the drawing board. So I'm just looking at if you were to take this site, if you were to take this proposal as the start of a negotiation with this community, how would you change it? One of the things, let me just say one other thing, and this is completely in the opinion, but I think it's terribly ugly design. I mean, it looks like it's sort of, I keep saying it, it's sort of a neo-Trump look, white with kind of gold, bumpers all over the place, anyways, but I'm looking to, I think that it's very likely that where this community is going to find itself is negotiating over this proposal. And
Exactly what they want. Remember what happened with the 90% that went to 80% in terms of height?
Mhm. That was
I think
90
that
feet to went to 80 feet.
they went to all that market rate. They changed that mix, okay? And they made it a slight adjustment in the number of units. I just think this is a negotiating position because it's so outrageously big and given the comments we've made. If you start arguing about whether it's 150 versus 127, they'll say, oh, we listened to the community. I don't think that's where we should be. I really don't think that's where the sentiment is.
Okay. Jim Nash?
Yeah, Peter, one brief comment. You're proposing a very reasonable way to proceed to try to tweak the project to make it work. Without the financial information,
Yeah, it's very
it's a
hard.
big blind man's buff. I don't see how it can ever have any say so in altering the balance of affordable, unaffordable without the financials. If they're not going to give us the financials, I just think we have to delay, stop, do everything we can to not let this go forward. If they're not, because there's no way that I see that we can tweak it. And if we delay it, maybe things will get better with more money.
Yeah. Yeah. Cheryl, brief.
Sure. I just want to remind you that at Tenley, back in 2012, I guess, a developer was chosen for that library. The neighbors went ballistic over it, and that housing proposal was defeated, soundly defeated, with the ANC behind the residents. And in that case, the Mary Che was behind the residents too, didn't desert her constituents. And that whole thing was defeated, and they rebuilt the library as the residents wished for. Just a little reminder.
Okay, and community outrage can be a powerful thing. One of the things to notice about this community is that it's been deeply split about this issue. So I'm not sure that you could muster the same. Um, I don't know. I don't remember the Tenleytown debate. I'm not sure that this community is as dead set against affordable housing at the site as perhaps Tenley was against any housing at the site. Christina.
Yes, to Cheryl's point, I don't know either, Peter, whether this community is as dead set as the Tenley community was, because I wasn't part of that debate. But I do recall something that Chairman Mendelson said to me a few months ago when I went to his local town hall, which was, if you are concerned about development on the Chevy Chase Commons, you need to get Matt Fruman in your camp because the entire council will defer to him. And what Cheryl has just pointed out is that Mary Che, who was then representing Ward 3, backed the Tenley town opponents. So it seems to me, well, to go back one step also, I very much agree with what Jim Nash just said. Our best position now is to try to delay this entire project on the grounds that now no one is happy, as Peter, you pointed out multiple times, I think correctly. and there's way too little transparency. There's so many issues of concern: parking, green space, hulking buildings, school affordability is a problem. I mean, or excuse me, school overcrowding, all of this. So many questions where we need more exploration, answer, and community engagement. There's strong grounds to advocate at least delay, and then add to that the inevitability of a new administration. That it seems to me could be a persuasive case to Matt Fruman, and Chairman Mendelson really gave me to understand that if we could get his backing, then we could, as a community, have the voice we need to have.
So I would just say, and I'll come to you momentarily, Cal. I hate I personally like Matt Fruman. I consider him a friend. So I hate to invite and a community to, pile on him, but I think you're absolutely right, Christina. And part of the reason I keep looking for oh, are there ways to turn the dial on this is that I strongly suspect from the having listened to Matt talk about this whole project over a period of time that that's what his first inclination is going to be. This is negotiate over this proposal. And I'm just trying to figure out, is there any grounds to do that? You may be right that there are no grounds. I just say, I mean, I've already said this a dozen times before, but I don't think that the kind of standard channels for communities to make their will known are going to work anymore on this. I don't think the ANC is going to have. I mean, I think the ANC will have a vote, and that'll be it. And so that I mean, I think we're going to have to convince Councilmember Fruman and the leading mayoral candidates that this is not the right project, and that's going to be a really hard lift. So, Cal, yeah.
First of all, I want but just don't want to get lost too much in the Tenleytown thing. But they did build the building so that more floors could be built on top of the library. So they actually engineered that into the construction of the building, even though it was never used. That was all done, and I'll just echo what Peter said. We're, living in a different world than we were back then, financially and politically and otherwise. And so I would like to hear from some of the voices we haven't heard from, because we've mostly heard from 5 or 6 people going through the queue over and over again.
Yeah. I'm asking. I think that if we don't hear from others, I'm going to just take a quick look at what's put in the chat. I think we can end this today, but I just want you to understand. I think this period going forward is immensely complicated, what we do as a community. And I also think that the fact that we've ended up with a proposal that has advocates on either side not satisfied might lead to a period of agreement among us about how to approach this that would be less divisive than what we've seen over the last 5 years, which has been, as an ANC commissioner now in his 6th year, it's been really painful. Painful personally, but also to see a community so divided. Let me just take a quick look at the chat, and then I do invite people who haven't spoken to speak. Wow, a lot of these look. Yeah, Michelle Mullen reminds us the surveys says that the ANC has taken several surveys indicate the majority of residents here do not want to add housing to the community center library site. I just point out that my district, I believe, in the most recent vote, a majority supported housing. Bruce Sherman, my colleague on the ANC, who has conducted a lot of the polling, tends to say that the majority of the community, it's a little more complicated than that. But now let's see. Len Jeweler, the architect said that the front facade is meant to reference the Avalon. The architect, I assume this is the architect of the Rift Valley proposal, said that the front facade is meant to reference the Avalon. Hard to see, except for perhaps the marquee that advertises the library and community center. Um, Mary Rouse provides a link to the race meeting, the race committee meeting, the ANC's race committee meeting that Fruman attended. Mary, when was that? Are you here?
That was, I think it was
I mean,
last week or the week
recent or a
before.
long time ago?
It was the 6th, it was the 15th of
Yeah,
January,
I
the day
see.
before the press release came out, and it seems a little suspicious that Fruman would probably have already written that press release that was issued the next day.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was 6 days ago.
Okay. This is Elizabeth McPike, agree with Sarah Wasserman. Original height was a cynical negotiating stance. Small reduction meant to placate the community. This could easily be a repeat of that tactic. Um, Jane Mayers, come on, Jane, speak up. Some of us are happy. Uh, you willing to? You're muted.
Sorry, I didn't expect to be speaking or want to speak, and I came in here very, very late. And we have, as you pointed out, this has gone on for a number of years, and somehow it doesn't seem to me that delaying any further is going to make one whit of difference. Nobody seems to have budged from their position in any way. I really, really, really want us to be the last neighborhood in this city to get an updated and modern and nice library and associated community center to complement it. I have absolutely no problem with housing being attached to it. The percentage of affordable versus unaffordable, there can be a certain percentage built there on that space, and then housing built at other places too, if there is space at UDC or other places. So to me, it's just, do we want, I wish people understood what they would be getting, especially with a modern and good and nice library and its programming.
Let me just say, I'm appreciative of you speaking up. I mean, we need to hear all the voices, not just Mary
And I
Rouse.
think that voices like mine have not been speaking up at all because the others are,
I
I don't necessarily want to wade into this. Thank you.
um, uh, Mary Rouse cautions me that the issue is not affordable housing; it's giving up public property for any housing. Lynn Jeweler points out that in the Tenleytown case, Mary Rouse was Mary Che was very reluctant to switch her position in order to support the opponents of housing at the Tenley Library. She was either a candidate or newly elected.
What does
Um, this is Michelle Wolin, community successfully fought putting housing at Southwest Library. Okay, well, Elizabeth Pike, since you know Councilmember Fruman so well, why would he be willing to give up so much of what the community cares about in exchange for a modest number? Elizabeth, I can't speak for I can't speak for my fellow colleagues on the ANC. I can't speak for Councilmember Fruman. I'm giving him my best guess about how he's going to approach this, but what to say why he's going to approach it that way beats me. I mean, housing was defeated at every other. Who is this? This is Gerald Barnes. Housing was defeated at every other library rebuild in DC except for the West End. These are, I think we've heard most of this. So look, it's almost 7:30. I really appreciate, well, I'm mean, Christina, you have your hand up. Do you want to?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I forgot to put it down.
Yeah,
Forgive me.
I mean, I don't think we need to make any more of a marathon of this. I'll tell you, I would love to hear from any and all of you about ideas about what, whether there are things that if we are stuck with this, we should negotiate changes in this proposal, how we approach it, and how we approach conveying our opposition, um, or how we approach um, conducting this debate going forward. I just think it's getting into the how we do that is unclear to me. Anyways, I thank you all. I will get out on the listserv and other social media the spreadsheet that just comparing this to the my best guess about what the current situation is. And um, Mary, if it's short, go ahead.
I would just say, how has it gone for you, Peter, when you've tried to negotiate with the city? How has that worked for you? I mean, really, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I would just say that the opposite is true too, which is just being beginners is is has its own cost. So Cal, really short. We got to wrap up.
Yeah,
We're now
very,
really going to
very
make it to
short.
8:30 if everybody has their last.
Very, very short. You know, I would like to see a comparison chart of what they showed us in March and what they're talking about now, because I feel like part of my objection to this is that it feels somewhat like a bait and switch, in terms of especially the proportion of affordable housing switching from 2/3 to 1/3.
Well, I've made a chart that compares their March to 2025 proposal and their current proposal, but I've got to tell you, it's thin on information at critical points. So I mean, I'll put it out there, but with the caveat that it's thin, right? I mean, so anyways, I'm happy as there are people who can cull information from all sorts of corners and if we can supplement this and make it more useful, I'm all for it. So, okay, thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of you all coming. I look forward to trying to figure out how to what the way forward looks like. So, thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Now, how do I turn off the record?